All right. So I want to welcome everybody again for coming. This is important that we all come together. I want to say that I believe that everyone who comes up here on stage today is special, but so is every one of you in the crowd. We're all in this together. We are one big team. And so thank you for coming. The Windham Board of Selectmen chairman a couple weeks ago told a crowd of 500 plus that we are irrelevant. Anybody agree with him? No! The people in our government need to be told that we, the people, are the government. We are the government, and they serve us. They represent us, and when we speak, they need to listen. When I made that statement 3 weeks ago, a couple of selectmen laughed. So we need to send people like that a message and send them home. And I mean that. I'm not, this is not a cliche. I've been to many, many rallies over the past 10, 12 years. This is not a rally. This is a movement. We are taking our country back, one town at a time. If I could see a show of hands, I'd like to know how many people are here to learn a little bit more about the forensic audit that's taking place up in Pembroke. Okay. I also would like to know who is here because you want to make a difference. I'm going to ask you later on today to please step up and help us. We have a few very important initiatives that will send a very strong message, and we are taking our country back, and it is starting here today. So, this government integrity project, that's really what it's supposed to be. We want to restore integrity to our government. And I believe one of the things was to push very strongly for this forensic audit that's going on up in Concord. We had almost an entire state government who turned their back on what happened in Windham. By the army of hands that I saw raised, I'm confident to say you're probably aware of what took place, and I don't have to go through any of that. I'll just say it was the largest discrepancy in the history of the state after a recount, and nobody was interested in looking into that. We want to make sure that our votes count. So, Senator Bob Guida was the only person that I am aware of in the Senate who pushed to make Senate Bill 43 happen. He put a lot of political capital on the line in order to make that happen. And behind the scenes, he bullied people in a way that most people would not. So I believe that we all owe a great deal of gratitude to Senator Guida, and he's not here today. He's calling in. Do we have him on the phone? Yes. I'll tell you what, he's not on the phone yet, so do me a favor and repeat that applause, because it's important that he hears that.
Absolutely. Let us know when he's on the phone.
Hello, Senator Guida. Awesome. All right, we're going to put you on live here in Windham with a whole bunch of pictures here, okay?
Give me a minute just to get myself ready here.
We heard you. Yes, sir.
Gargle. Yeah, your voice.
Thank you for the invite. I apologize for not getting there in person. But
Hey, hold on, Bob. Hold on. I want to introduce you. These people have something to say to you. So I'm just going to go through what I told these people about how you were the driving force behind Senate Bill 43. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have an audit right now. Can you hear us now, Bob?
I'm certainly not deserving of this.
Oh, yes,
So
I was moved by two citizens, and that's really the takeaway here is the two citizens that have changed the complexion and the landscape of elections in our state and possibly across the country, certainly as part of a nationwide scrutiny. That's Ken, of course, Ken Eyring and Dave Strang. So, Ken had asked me to speak a little bit about the chronology of what happened. And so, of course, November 3rd, we had the election. Christy St. Laurent, a Democrat, had a close call. Correct me if I'm wrong, it was like 24 votes, something like that.
yes, 0.005% losing discrepancy. Right there.
Right, and
24
so
votes.
she fully in accordance with what I or anyone else would have done with a 10,006 vote turnout, said, I'd like to do a recount. So recounts are done by hand. Secretary of State oversees them, and they're done in Concord. I was there participating actually in a recount for another state rep position, but not concurrently with Christy St. Laurent. Regardless of that, the outcome of the hand recount was historically speaking, staggeringly different than anything we'd ever seen before. It is numerically the largest vote count discrepancy in the history of the state. And of course, the numbers, 300 Republicans in the recount gained, 4 Republicans each gained 300 votes in the recount. And Ms. St. Laurent lost, I believe, 98, 99 votes. And so clearly, this was a huge issue for those that understand that a very high percentage. If you were to ask Bill Gardner, a very high percentage of our races are determined by 10 or fewer votes in the state. You'd be astounded to know that. I don't have the numbers handy, but it's an eye-opener. And so I was unaware of this recount, this discrepancy, until Ken, who I've known it's 2010, I think, and Dave Strang, each independently, initially, called me and said, "Hey, do you see what happened in Windham?" And I said, "Well, no, I really don't. It's not in my district. It's, way south, somewhere down near Atlanta, Georgia, I think." But, so I picked up on it and started looking at it. Thank you to their prompting. And if I may say so, their diligence, and I'm grateful for it, because the reaction of our state elected officials was somewhat astounding. So my first call, of course, was to the Secretary of State. Secretary Gardner, said, "Well, yeah, it's a big difference, but it didn't change the outcome of the race. So we're not really interested in pursuing it any further." And I thought to myself, I'm a retired airline captain. I thought that's like having a flaming wreck on the ground and saying, well, we never had an engine failure before, so we're not going to investigate it. So I said that's just not acceptable. And that is just simply not acceptable, especially given the political climate surrounding the 2020 election in total, nationwide. So I was not going to take no for an answer. I did some research, right? And of course, I called the town of Windham. I called their moderator and town clerk, and those being primarily the folks that are, if you will, the capstone of the election officials in the town. And come to find out, yeah, they had actually written a letter to the Attorney General's office. The letter was received on November 19th. Remember, the recount was done, I think it was the 12th or 13th. And on the 19th, they received a written letter through town council requesting an investigation into the outcome, because the disparity of the recount was very significant. They never received the courtesy of a response. That, to me, is unconscionable. They never got the courtesy of a response. And so I pressed on, pushing and asking questions. And at the end of the day, November 25th, the Ballot Law Commission, which Ms. St. Laurent had asked to review the recount, ruled that the recount stood. It was a good vote. But they also unanimously voted to request an investigation into the machines and the process that delivered this largest disparity in the vote count history of the state.
Hey Bob, can I cut in for a second?
Yeah.
I think these guys know the history of what went on. I think what would be great is if you could share some of the, whatever you feel comfortable with, some of the challenges that you met that maybe weren't public, and to get us through up until the law being passed with the help that you gained and garnered in the Senate and then in the House, and then turning it into law.
Sure, okay, we can do that. Thanks for the redirect. I appreciate that. So the challenge was, in a nutshell, the Attorney General. And I called the Attorney General, and on a couple of occasions, and along with Dave Strang at the time, on January 4th, we had a conversation. And I asked the Attorney General, Gordon McDonald then, I said, will you investigate this discrepancy? It's been requested by the town, it's been requested by St. Laurent, it's been requested by the Ballot Law Commission, it's being requested by this senator, it's been requested by a couple of citizens. And the answer was no. And the no was because their interpretation of RSA 7:6C, okay, that governs investigations into election stuff, their read of the statute, the actual language, said that they needed to have an assertion that criminal activity had taken place before they could begin an investigation under the statute. And I vehemently disagreed with that. If you read the statute, all it says is upon receipt of a written complaint. Okay? It doesn't say upon receipt of an alleged criminal activity or a violation of election law. It just says upon receipt of a written complaint, which had been done by the town and augmented by the unanimous decision of the Ballot Law Commission. So I very, very bluntly informed the Attorney General that I considered, first of all, a non-response to the town from the November 19th letter. Now this is January 4th, okay? The non-response to the town and the failure to act somewhere between dereliction of duty and gross negligence. And that was a pretty short, terse phone call. 2 days later, they agreed to begin an investigation. Well, the investigation was little more than a paper chase. They were going to view all the documents and records, but no, they were not going to touch the machines, so forth. So I kept pushing and assembled a meeting at which there were the chair of the House and Senate election law committees, parenthetically, both of whom were not interested in doing an audit, the Secretary of State, and I believe either him or the Deputy Secretary of State, it's either Gardner or Dave Scanlon, President of the Senate, myself, and the Vice Chair of Election Law in the Senate, in short, the powers that be, okay? And I asked Ann Edwards, who was representing the Attorney General's office, I asked Assistant Attorney General Edwards, at the end of this discussion, which was clearly going nowhere, I said, okay, let's cut to the chase. Will you do an investigation into this discrepancy? And she says, I will not. I said, can I ask why? She said, because the statute doesn't allow it. I said, well, I disagree, and my opinion, in fact, is supported by the opinion of former just retired Chief Justice Bob Lynch from the New Hampshire Supreme Court, who agreed with my interpretation of the language in the statute. But that doesn't matter. So I then asked, would you consider obtaining a court order or a court interpretation, okay, to give you comfort that the statute in fact does? And the answer came back again, no, I will not. Okay, and it became apparent at that point that we were going to have to pass a law in the legislative side of the House to force the executive branch Attorney General to do his job. Think about that. Think about that. We had to pass a law to make the Attorney General investigate the largest discrepancy in voting recount in history in the state. I just find that deeply troubling. And I know that you do as well. Judging from what I see as the groundswell that's come out of this, which is in my 25 years in state politics, state and local, I've never seen an issue rise to the level of public participation as this one. And that's good on you. Don't relent. Keep it up. Okay? So I presented the issue to the Senate in caucus. So the two parties in the Senate will caucus with their own members and discuss issues and how we should approach them. And I brought it up. We drafted language and brought it to the floor of the Senate. What we did was took the bill off the table and replaced the language with this language, because obviously it hadn't been introduced as regular legislation during the filing period. We had to hijack a bill to make it happen, so we did. And it went through the Senate and passed 24 to nothing. That's a really, it's really unusual. Except on apple pie and those types of bills or resolutions. And so it then went over to the House, where Chair Griffin, Barb Griffin of the House Election Law Committee, worked really, really hard. And Ken was right there. He was advising, helping, providing, along with Bill Gardner, okay, Secretary of State. So it went through the House process, which was much more torturous. The House amended the bill, and it needed amending. In the interest of time, we had put together language that was fairly general from the Senate side. In conversations with the leadership on the House side, we asked them to, they have 20 people on a committee, we have 5. They have 400 members, we have 24. So we're sort of resource limited. So they did a lot of hard work on that bill. And politically, it was very difficult too. But at the end of the day, it came out of that committee 20 to nothing, ought to pass, as amended. Went to the floor of the Senate, passed with a voice vote. Because the bill had been changed, it had to come back to the Senate for concurrence. And we concurred 24 to nothing, and that became Senate Bill 43, was signed into law. I think it was April 12th by Governor Sununu. And that started the 45-day clock. Deeply distressing, okay, is the failure to act of the Attorney General. Right, and then the resistance to the process and the optics. They have no clue, and I honestly don't believe they're terribly interested in what the general public thinks or feels, because after all, we're the Attorney General's office, and you're just merely the population. There are good people in the AG's office, but there are also not so good people there. All right, and I've seen this over my years in the House and the Senate. So the problem is that we have bureaucrats, all governments have them, who've become so detached from the population they are supposed to serve that they're insulated and isolated. And how anyone in an attorney general's office, especially in a live free or die state, could ignore the disparity and the repeated requests from all quarters that we do something about this and say no, astounds me, escapes me. And so I am very grateful to Ken and to Dave, and equally or more so to all of you who've given up your time to make our elections safe again. You know, I also I have concerns because there are people who are trying to prove their hypothesis, okay, by fitting facts into the hypothesis. All right? And I have met extensively with Harry Hursty and with Phil Stark. These guys are brilliant. They are trying to chase where the data is taking them. The process that they have, it appears to be sound, but I can assure you there's a great deal of underlying foundational work that's been done.
Hey, Bob.
Is it perfect? No, it's not.
Bob?
But yeah,
I'm going to cut you off because you're taking the thunder away from some other people who are going to cover that topic. But before we go, I want you to know, I wish you were here, I have the very first Government Integrity Project award that we would like to present to Senator Bob Guida, New Hampshire Legislator of the Year. I will give that to you, Bob, the next time I see you.
Thank you, Bob!
I'm honored, and all I'll say is this: the greatest president in the United States history, in my opinion, was George Washington, and the reason for that was he didn't want to be the president. They dragged him off his farm and took him back. He says, "Look, I won the war to give you the republic. Now you guys that are the bright ones, go figure it out." And they said, "No. We want you to serve." I say this because the element that I think is most important in a legislator is the character trait of humility. We need to learn to admit we can make mistakes, and we need to fix them when we make them. And that's something that I asked you, when was the last time you saw, a public figure admit to failure or mistake, and then try to correct it and move ahead constructively? That's what we're supposed to do. So we do it best when you help, when you participate, when you make your voices heard, and I encourage you to continue to do so. And let's just keep this live free or die state free.
Thanks, Bob. Okay. If they're listening, we got one more guy calling in. I think you want to hear from him as well.
Croc TV.